We talked about the Hall of Fame for a couple of days now, in particular Justin Verlander. It feels like there's been this rubber stamp with Justin Verlander is going to be a Hall of Famer, and I don't think that he is, at least not yet. And then Sports Illustrated's Jay Jaffe took a deep dive into some of these players who could be Hall of Famers, are Hall of Famers right now, and Jay is kind enough to join us on short notice. Let me start with Verlander. Is Justin Verlander a Hall of Famer right now, Jay?
No, but I think you can say that you can look back and say that about just about any 34-year-old pitcher. There aren't very many who, if they were to walk away today, would get the sort of Sandy Koufax treatment and get in before reaching, some of the major milestones that we typically associate with election to the Hall.
But Kershaw's a Hall of Famer right now.
Yeah, I would say Kershaw is, yes, because Kershaw's got those 3 Cy Young awards. There's the only 3 Cy Young winner who's outside the Hall is Roger Clemens, and we know why he's outside the Hall.
The most important stat that you look at as a pitcher, by the way, he's also the author of Cooperstown Case Book. We're talking to Jay Jaffe. So the number one stat you look for in a pitcher is, and the number one stat for a hitter is what?
Well, I tend to look at wins above replacement because I think that if you want to examine baseball history in a long view, you need to adjust for all the changes that have come down in over 100 years in scoring levels and ballparks and things like that. What wins above replacement does is kind of equalize for all of that. So I have a system called JAWS, the Jaffe Wins Above Replacement Score. It's a way of comparing candidates to those who are already in the Hall of Fame. It's kind of a first cut mechanism, but you want to take a closer look at all the qualifications that a guy has. So to me, wins and strikeouts, they're interesting and important, but I think that's my starting point is wins above replacement. And for Verlander, he's got 56.6 career WAR. The average Hall of Fame starter has 73.9, so he's a ways away. I also look at a player's 7-year peak, his best 7 seasons. He's got 43.5 there. The average Hall of Fame starter is about 50.
I'm looking at some other names here. By the way, I misspoke on Bert Blyleven. The Veterans Committee voted him into the Hall of Fame.
No, it's the writers voted Blyleven in.
Oh.
14 years. Took 14 years.
Oh, there you go. I screwed it up even again. Mike Mussina, Hall of Famer?
To me, yes, he's a lot higher in my JAWS ranking system, around 29th all time than Verlander, who's about 73rd.
All right, CC Sabathia, Hall of Famer right now.
No, but he's getting closer. I mean, I think that my system doesn't love him, but I do think that if he gets to 250 wins and 3,000 strikeouts, I think he's going to get there.
Does your ranking factor in pitching for a marquee team like the Yankees or the Dodgers or the Red Sox?
No. There's a lot that JAWS doesn't factor in that I think is absolutely important to incorporate. You want to think about postseason stuff. Obviously, Verlander did some things to enhance his cause. CC Sabathia has done some things to enhance his cause. The marquee effect, yeah, there's maybe something there. I think you have to be careful, though. A lot of that gets incorporated into the postseason already. If you're on a team like the Yankees that's a perennial contender, you have a much greater chance than if you're on, let's just say, the Houston Astros, historically speaking.
Carlos Beltran, Hall of Famer, if his career ends now?
Yes. I have him as one of the top 10 center fielders of all time. Tremendous collection, both on traditional stats and advanced stats. The 2,700 hits, the 435 homers, 300-plus stolen bases with the highest success rate, and the 8th best JAWS score among center fielders. I think he's a slam dunk in my mind, but I don't know if the voters see it that way yet.
Did it help that Vlad Guerrero got in? Does that help Beltran at all?
I think Vlad Guerrero getting in will help. He's, Vlad had a great first year showing on the ballot, 71.7%. I think he gets in either this year or next.
Joe Mauer, your opinion on Joe Mauer being a Hall of Famer surprised me.
Yeah, Joe Mauer did so much in his years as catcher before being forced off the position by his concussion. I mean, the 3 batting titles, the MVP award. I have him as 7th all time among catchers, and that's just based on his time behind the plate is 5th in terms of peak score. His best 7 seasons. I think. as a guy on a small market team. And one whose salary has been disproportionate to his contribution since moving to first base. He catches a lot of flack, but he did so much. One of the best offensive catchers of all time, and a pretty solid defender before the injuries forced him off that position.
Yeah, 3 Gold Gloves, 3 batting titles. Is Buster Posey a Hall of Famer?
I think he's headed there, absolutely. You look at what he's done with the MVP award, the Rookie of the Year award, the batting title, the critical role in 3 championships. I think he's well on his way.
Chase Utley, Hall of Famer.
I think so. I don't think he's going to get there. The big thing when I've studied the Hall of Fame is that nobody with less than 2,000 hits has been elected. Less than 2,000 hits since the expansion era began in 1960 has been elected. He's at 1,850, and it doesn't look like he's going to close the gap. We've seen a lot of guys with less than 2,000 fall short. Bobby Grich being a prime example of the type of player that Utley is. Dick Allen, another one who's below 2,000. Minnie Minoso. It seems to be a hard and fast rule that I wish the voters could overcome.
Pedroia?
I think if he can bounce back from this current knee injury, and boy, that's a big if. The more you learn about the cartilage stuff, I think he'll get there. He's got the championships, the MVP, the Rookie of the Year award, but he's got to stay healthy. And unfortunately, second base is a very demanding position for that, and a lot of guys tend to flame out.
Curt Schilling's political views keeping him out of the Hall of Fame?
I don't think it's. I mean, I think they're certainly not helping. And he took a big step back in the voting this past year, but I think he's eventually going to get there. I think the problem that a lot of people still have is they're going just by the wins total, which is around 210, without recognizing the high strikeout rate, the best strikeout to walk ratio of the since the pitching distance got moved to 60 foot 6 inches. The fact that he was the Bob Gibson of his generation when it came to postseason stuff. I think he had topped 50% of the vote just over a year ago, and which is traditionally a strong indicator of future elections. So I think he gets there eventually, but he's probably going to have to let the political environment change before he gets there.
Well, it feels like Clemens and Bonds have let the political environment or the steroid environment or younger, older writers, that maybe that cloud is kind of passing through or passing over these guys, and maybe clear skies here.
Yeah, I don't know if it's fully clear yet, but yes, those two passed 50%. I think that the evolving electorate is probably going to eventually elect them before the remaining 5 years on the ballot are up. So I see those guys getting in down the road too.
Jay, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. Always fun to talk about this. Contributing writer at Sports Illustrated, the author of the Cooperstown Casebook. Thank you, Jay.
All right, thanks so much, Dan. A pleasure.
That's Jay Jaffe.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.